Welcome to another edition of Bible Time. Goes along with the daily Bible reading, Believers Fellowship, and we're having a great time going through the book of Joshua. And what a great statement we have in our text today. We're looking at chapters 21 and 22, and right at the end of chapter 21, there is this statement that says, "Not one word of all the good promises that the Lord had made to the house of Israel had failed; all came to pass." Well, that's a great way to start your day. That's a great passage to be reminded of. And we're going to be looking at that as we go through these chapters here today. But let me just give you a little overview here. Remember, this last half of the book of Joshua, they're dividing up the land. They've conquered the land. Now they're dividing it up. In chapter 21, the Levites get their cities, and their cities are spread amongst the land, and they get a city and the pasture land around that city. And you may have noticed yesterday we talked about the cities of refuge. All of those cities of refuge are in Levite cities, and I don't think that's an accident. I think it's there because the Levites in those cities can help make sure that justice is served in the cases that come before them. They're in those cities of refuge. And then in chapter 22, it gets kind of interesting because here Joshua is sending the 2.5 tribes that took the land on the east side of the Jordan, and their warriors said, "Yeah, we'll go with you and we'll fight. We'll help you conquer the land." And they did that, and now Joshua is sending them back. Now, and I like what he says in verse 5 of chapter 22. Take a look at this. He says to them as they go back, "Only be very careful to observe the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, to love the Lord your God, and to walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments, and to cling to him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul." That's a great way to send people off. That's a great reminder. That's a great leader. Joshua's a great leader, calling these people that, "Thank you for your service. You can go back to your homes now, but be careful. Be careful to love the Lord with all your heart." And that's a call to true-hearted loyalty. When it talks about loving the Lord with all your heart, that means that you're going to be loyal to him. You're going to be a true-hearted loyalty to the Lord. Well, as you read the rest of the chapter, you see that when they get to the Jordan River, before they pass over the Jordan River, they build this huge altar. And word gets back to the rest of the tribes of Israel, and they're going, "What is up with these people? They've only been gone a short time, and they're already getting into idolatry. They're already getting into apostasy. Well, we got to straighten this out. We got to go after these people." And so they send a delegation after them. And as you look at it, at least on the surface, it sounds like those 2.5 tribes, the Reubenites, Gadites, and half of Manasseh, that it sounds like they had good intentions, and that this is a altar of witness. It's not an altar of sacrifice. It's an altar of witness between the tribes on the west and the tribes on the east, that they would remember them, and that they would always be included in the things of the Lord amongst the people of the Lord. But there's some things to take notice of here. First of all, the guys on the west side, they hear about this. They make some pretty hasty conclusions about what's going on with these guys, and they are not good conclusions that they come to. But then when they have the conversation and the conference with the people on the east side, and the east side explains why they did what they did, well, that what they say isn't always so good, because they said, "God made a barrier, this Jordan River, God made a barrier between us and you." What? God made a barrier between you? No. The way I remember it is, you guys chose to live over there, and that was kind of a questionable call that you did that. But now you're saying, "Hey, we had to do something because God made a barrier between us. And oh, by the way, we don't trust your children." When everybody grows up and we're gone and our children are taken over, we think they're going to forget about us, and that's going to be bad for our children. So they're blaming God for making the barrier, and then they're saying, "Yeah, we don't trust your children." Well, it wasn't the greatest of situations, but it was resolved. No war broke out, which it was there was potential of that, there being some kind of a civil war. But there are issues all the way around, issues that we can relate to, right? I mean, we make hasty conclusions about people, and we may have good intentions in what we're doing, but we don't really think it very far through. And then when we're confronted about it, we make excuses about it. So there's something to learn all the way around right there. And these things that we're seeing right here, just kind of brewing right here, well, you're going to see it explode as time goes on in Israel. So that's why it's good for us to focus in on what God is doing. The people aren't always doing the right thing, and they're not always thinking the right thing, but we can always look to God in these texts and see what he is up to. And that's where the end of chapter 21 is so helpful and so refreshing. Let me just read the last three verses, verse 43 through 45. It says, "Thus the Lord gave to Israel all the land that he swore to give to their fathers, and they took possession of it, and they settled it." There's God keeping his covenant. He said, I'm going to give you this land, and you're going to go in and take possession of it. That can go all the way back to Genesis 12 with Abraham. And here's God faithfully fulfilling his covenant. If we look at the people of God, we might get discouraged at times, but we look at God and what God is doing. We look at God and his word. We look at God and his promises. We can always find strong encouragement. Look at verse 44. "And the Lord gave them rest on every side, just as he had sworn to their fathers. Not one of all their enemies had withstood them, for the Lord had given all their enemies into their hands." Now, maybe they haven't completely driven out all the people, but that's not the Lord's fault. The Lord gave them the land, and the Lord gave them the rest that he promised them. In fact, you go back to chapter 1, verse 13, and he's talking about the rest that he's going to provide for them as they enter into the land. And so again, here's God doing what he said. His power was on display, and he came through for the people. And then that great statement in verse 45, "Not one word of all the good promises that the Lord had made to the house of Israel had failed. All came to pass." He has kept his word. All of it. He has kept all of his word. And Joshua, when we get to chapter 23 and he's going to give his farewell address, he's going to say the same thing in chapter 23, verse 14. God's kept all of his word to us. And then when you get to 1 Kings chapter 8 and you get down to verse 56, that's Solomon dedicating the temple that he built, and he says the same thing. God has kept all of his word. That's our testimony as Christians. I'm trusted in God's promises. I'm trusted in God's power, and God has kept all of his word. I have never, ever been disappointed with God. If I look at the people, and even when they have good intentions, they don't always do the right thing, they don't always say the right thing, okay. But God always does the right thing, and God always says the right thing, and everything God says comes to pass. That's great encouragement for us to look at today, and to hold on to today as we face the challenges of our day with the people in our lives, that we can look to God and know that he keeps all of his word. And that's why, one reason why, we do Bible time. So I hope to see you tomorrow for more Bible time.